Take it away, Katie.
Okay, everyone. I'm here just to introduce our presentation this evening. We have James Goliath and Paul Roszak from CT Consulting. They're here to speak about McMinnville downtown revitalization, what we've done and where we can go from here. They both were a member of the EG&G team who were part of the first phase of downtown's revitalization that has affected this area of downtown. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to James or Paul.
I'll have Paul take the lead. Thanks. Well, good evening, and thank you for having us. Thank you for having us here this evening. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie, for the introduction. James and I were involved in the phase one of the downtown project, and I remember you, Shirley. Good to see you again. And tonight we wanted to talk about how far we've come, revisit where we were with phase one and how we got to where we are today, and the work to be done from here out. So again, I'm Paul Roszak. I'm a senior landscape architect with CT Consultants, as I said, both James and I were involved in the phase one project. James is the regional manager for our Nashville office, and he's also a civil engineer. An overview of the project, where we came from. In 2001, the city of McMinnville embarked on a master planning effort for the downtown district to address the visual and infrastructure deficiencies with the goal of fostering economic development. The planning process also identified implementation of a project in a phased approach. 2 phases have been implemented. The first phase consisted of comprehensive improvements along portions of Main Street, Court Square, and City Mall, and was completed in 2006. The project provided a sense of place within the core downtown district, and the economic benefit has been significant. The second phase consisted of limited improvements along a portion of Morford Street and portions of Spring Street and Sparta Street, and were not as comprehensive in scope, with less impact compared to phase one. A phase 3 project area is a consideration, generally the area to the east of the completed phase 1 project. It is suggested that when implemented, the phase 3 project is designed in a comprehensive manner to the level of quality as the phase 1 project to foster further economic development. So where were we? This is back around 2000, 2001. And I think it's good to take a look back to see where we were and how far we've come and the result of where we are today. So some images, I'll go through those rather quickly, of Main Street. This is near the City Mall. Another image of Main Street and what it looked like prior to the project being undertaken. Another view along Main Street, obviously infrastructure, accessibility issues, deterioration. This is looking at Court Square, of course, and Hebe. It was kind of in need of restoration, kind of tucked into a corner of the square. And another view along Court Street with obviously the City Hall building on the left side. And the area in front of the courthouse used to be just parking really basically up to the front door almost of the courthouse. And City Mall. As we started this project in 2000, 2001, there were plans for the farmers market to be going in the parking lot behind City Mall. And where we are today, or where we were in 2005, I believe this was, how did we get there? How did we get here? This was the day of groundbreaking. And I want to talk next about the revitalization process. How did we get there? So one of the first things we did was we had a community input process. This is an example of notes taken, a list of comments received from the public. We want to know, what did the public want to see as part of this project? What were the issues? What were the deficiencies? What were problems? And what is the vision? What do you want your downtown to capture? And then along with that, we did a lot of background research. What are the deficiencies? What are the condition of the infrastructure, the utilities? What needs to be replaced as part of the project? And began to make preliminary recommendations. From there, using the public input and the background research and what the deficiencies were, next one, we began to develop concepts to capture the community's vision for the improvements. And again, this is that same area in front of City Mall and what the improvements would look like based on what we thought the community was telling us. And City Mall itself, from Main Street looking back, making that one thing the city wanted was the community wanted us to make that an inviting connector from Main Street to the farmers market. Court Square, when we started the project, we understood that I think it was in the 40s or 50s, TDOT cut through the square. Traffic used to flow around the square, and the square was connected as one green space. And so the desire was, even though we physically couldn't bring traffic around the square and make that a one big green space, the idea was to at least make it read as one space again, at least closed off for festivals. So the concept was to use the decorative pavement in the sidewalks on each side of the square and carry that through the roadway and define the roadway with bollards and bring the curb down without a curb height through the square. And even looking at the backs of the buildings on the south side of Main Street, the future vision for how those buildings could be made more welcoming to the parking area and make those usable backdoor entrances from the parking lot. The master plan, once we had the concepts tied down, we applied that in Plan B to the entire project area. From there, we began to look at phasing of the project. So again, this dates back to around 2001. The first phase in green, which, as you know, has been constructed, was Main Street from Chancery to east of Sparta and the Court Square, South Depot Street, as well as City Mall. And then phase two, the area in yellow, was portion of Morford between Chancery and Sparta, Spring Street, and the parking lot improvements. And then third phase was identified as the rest of Morford, basically from Chancery out to Lind, as well as Main Street from Chancery to Lind, and then High Street and Lind Street itself. So once we tied down with the community what phase one project area would be, we went into design development where we looked at that specific area in greater design detail. And then from there, we took each block and did a cost estimate. And there was a total for each of those blocks or each of those areas. And from there, we used that to put together the financing plan. James, you want to talk about the financing phase one?
So yeah, just a little bit about the phase one plan. So when this project was approached, just like everything with the phasing and what can be done, we looked at different funding sources to pay for the improvements. I mean, there's a lot of different improvements. There's both infrastructure, there's like some of the amenities, there's the sidewalks, and the different grants, different funding sources will pay for different items. So in this particular case, this goes back to the money that was actually secured for the first phase. They used some T21 funds, which now are the TAP funds was what the new designation would be. We use some ARC funds, some STP funds. There was some county money, and then there was even some local contributions also. McMinnville Electric was a big supporter of the project. They contributed quite a bit. There was some fundraising. There was money for the water and the sanitary. And the first project was about $5.5 million. And I think one of the key things to really note here is all the various funding sources. There wasn't one funding source that really paid for everything. And I think that's a lot of the challenge on any of these projects is to find the funding. But when you start looking at all the different funding sources and trying to match up what can pay for what can pay for the ADA improvements, what can pay for your storm sewer, what can pay for the road, the curb, and you can start taking all these different pots of money, you can quickly see it can add up to quite a lot. So again, this was just a brief recap of what was secured for the first phase.
And as part of that project too, Bill Brock and Public Works, they did a lot of the work, which saved on some costs. They removed the roadway themselves, did a lot of the demolition. And McMinnville Electric obviously was a big source for the electrical work as part of the project. So where are we now? This is, of course, after the project was completed. This is in front of the city mall and what it looked like before, and with the improvements with the community's vision, which looks, I think a lot like the concept. And city mall itself. And Court Square, that greenish gray pavement doesn't show as well in some of the images, but the square was connected. I think it reads as a nice one space, especially when the roadway can be closed down. And Court Square itself, again, there was basically parking up to the door of the courthouse, and without losing any parking spaces, but reconfiguring the parking, we were able to gain some green space in front of the courthouse and a nice connector from the courthouse into the square as well. And Hebe, not as part of the project, but in conjunction with the project, was restored and put in a prominent place in the square. And there's been some private sector investment. I showed some images of what could be done with the backs of those buildings, and that certainly has occurred with some of the businesses that create some backdoor entrances from the parking lot on the south side into the backs of those buildings. And there's been, I think, significant private sector investment into the buildings themselves, and some of the vacant floors have been filled up on top of those businesses. And I think if you were to look back at 2000, 2001, the vacancies on Main Street compared to today, it's been a significant turnaround. And the project was so successful, in fact, that in 2006, I believe it was awarded the Tennessee Public Works Association Project of the Year. It received that designation, that award. Bill Brock was a member of that association and was instrumental in getting that the project submitted for that award. And I talked about the economic impact. Soon after the project was completed, a graduate student, as part of her thesis, did a comparison of the economic impact. What was it like before the project and afterwards? And there was some growth economic impact wise along Main Street after the project was done. But I think, as we all know, the true economic impact was realized later after this study was done. So phase two, I talked about that. There was a section of Morford Street between Sparta and Court Square that was done, as well as a section of Sparta and Spring Street. And what, as part of the master plan, that was the vision, the concept for Morford Street. And then get the next one. This was what was implemented, perhaps not as to the level as was envisioned as part of the master planning process. So where do we go from here towards a phase three? So again, area in green that's been completed as part of the phase one project, portion of Main Street, Court Square, Depot Street, and City Mall. Phase two, the area in yellow, completed to a lesser level of treatment. And then blue, the area that was identified as the future phase three way back when the master plan was done. Again, Morford Street from Court Square to Lind Street, and Main Street from Chancery to Lind, as well as High Street and Chancery itself. And then I think it's important too, that section of Colville in front of the blue building, once the blue building is developed, to have access for the people living in that area to have access to Main Street, a safe and welcoming access to the businesses along Main Street. Morford Street. So this is, as part of the master plan, we did some conceptual renderings for Morford Street. This is to the west of Court Square. And then Main Street, this was the vision back in 2001 for West Main Street, just west of Chancery. So what would be the process for a phase 3? Step A, topographic survey of the project area. Step B, input, inventory, and evaluation, which would include perhaps forming a project steering committee to guide the project by serving as a liaison to the city administration and to promote the project to the community and funding agencies. Gather existing background information for the project area, conduct public meeting to seek input on issues, concerns, and direction for improvements, just like we did for phase 1. Evaluate existing conditions, infrastructure, sidewalks. Previously prepared existing conditions report would need to be updated and relooked at since a lot of time has lapsed. Step C, concept refinement and development. Review the conceptual renderings previously prepared in 2001 for Morford and West Main and update as may be needed based on the public input. Prepare additional concepts for the areas that we didn't have concepts prepared for along the rest of the phase 3 area that I mentioned previously. Design development, prepare design developments, much like we did for the phase 1 project. To illustrate in plan view, the design character, materials, scale, and relationship project components, including the roadways, sidewalk, crosswalks, accessibility, street lighting, traffic signalization, landscape treatment, street trees, and other enhancements. And then prepare a detailed cost estimate for each of those blocks within that phase 3 project area. So we can get a handle on what that would cost, and that would help us when it's time to go seek funding for the project. Determine project subfacing. Project may need to be divided into more than one phase. Preliminary engineering, that includes working with the utilities, TDOT, and looking at things in greater detail with the utilities, roadway improvements, sidewalks and accessibility, street lighting, electrical, traffic, site furnishings, signage, trees and landscaping, and public spaces. Next is a financing plan. Once we have the cost estimate, what would be involved there is to attach those costs to how is the project going to be funded, which would include grants or loans or whatever it might be appropriate. And then preparing a schedule for keeping the project on track, and the schedule for each of those grants. Step F, funding implementation. That's once we have a funding plan, going after the actual grants, making the applications and getting the project funding secured and in place. Step G, final design, which would include geotechnical investigation, final construction documents, specifications, bidding, and ultimately construction of the project. So the process I just talked about, I just want to point out that the National Main Street Center and McMinnville is a Main Street community in Tennessee. They've outlined a process which dovetails with what we've outlined, consisting of A, community vision for success. That involves the community input process. What does the community want? What is their vision? B, transformation strategies, which is also called the Main Street 4 Points approach. Economic vitality, design, promotion and organization, and then C, impact and measurement, which would include, much like the graduate student did for her study, what is the economic impact? What is the benefit of doing a project like this to a community economically? Why revitalization? Prime real estate location development, placemaking and infrastructure improvements and enhancements, create a place where people want to shop, dine, visit, invest, and do business. Economic growth through existing business expansion, new business development, increased tax revenues, job development, which includes existing job retention and new job creation, improved quality of life for residents, safety improvements, connectivity of neighborhoods to the business district. Downtowns and corridors are transformed into public spaces and a community asset, much like downtown, the phase 1 project did. Historic preservation and tourism. And James is going to talk about some potential funding sources for revitalization projects such as this.
Right. And actually, just before I get into the funding sources, and I think Paul did a very well job of trying to illustrate, seeing the aesthetics of a lot of, the pictures of a lot of the improvements. But when we approach a downtown, we really try to look at this holistically, not just the roadway, not just the sidewalks, not necessarily just within the right of way. We try to look from building face to building face. And I think that's important when you look at a downtown project to look at it holistically. And the reason I say that is I love working with landscape architects. I'm a civil engineer, so I'm usually working on the stuff underground. So I love seeing the lighting and the decorative sidewalks and the landscaping. But at the end of the day, a big part of it is the infrastructure, that's critical here. And a lot of it you don't see, and I don't know how much it necessarily is appreciated, but when you look at the age of the infrastructure, you look at your water lines, you look at your storm sewers, what you even have of storm sewers, you look at your sanitary, you look at your gas lines. I think it's important to know that a lot of that infrastructure, at least in the first phase, was very aged and it needed to be replaced. So when you're going to replace it, you're going to end up at some point spending dollars, whether you're patching something, whether you're doing some planned type of improvements at lengths at a time, and you're going to be repairing the surface. So if you're going to be repairing the surface and you're already going to be doing some of the infrastructure, maybe you can do it a little bit nicer, do it a little bit, with the decorative sidewalks, or put in, if you're already digging up the street, well, maybe it's a good time to put in some utilities underground at the same time. It's going to minimize and save you some costs overall. So I think that's important to keep that in mind, because the infrastructure is definitely critical, and especially even with the blue building, with the improvements there, with the existing businesses that are here, and then even both retaining businesses and new businesses, of giving the people the infrastructure they need to continue and for the city to grow. And with that, which kind of ties into the funding of it also, just like in the first phase, and like Paul had mentioned, the first project was built, it was bid once. The bids came in a little high. We pulled some items out. We said, okay, maybe the city's going to do some of these items, and McMinnville Electric is going to do some. We rebid it. Even when we rebid it the second time, even with all the funding sources we had, there were still some further improvements that the city said, oh, okay, well, maybe we're going to do some of the demolition. We're going to do some landscaping. And it's thinking maybe a little bit outside of the box of how to get the project built and within something that's manageable. And that's the key with a lot of these funding sources. And I'll be the first to admit I'm familiar with a lot of these funding sources. We have our grant experts in our office. But the key that I really want to show with a couple of these grants is, we're trying to look at a little bit of everything. So for instance, on this slide, when you're looking at streets and sidewalks, well, TDOT has various grants. There's STBG grants that are out there. There's a multimodal access grants. The nice thing about the multimodal is it's a 5% match to 95% return on money. It's about $1 million is your cap, but that also pays for some of your professional fees as that grant can pay for. Your TAP funds, that's an 80-20 match that comes through TDOT, and that pays for a lot of your pedestrian improvements. So your sidewalks, even your pedestrian signal portion of your traffic signals. It'll pay for some of your crosswalks. And then there's definitely some other grants, or other opportunities. There's your state street aid, shared revenue program, and then there's even some other not as popular grants or as known grants. And sometimes you have to dive in to see exactly what they can be used for, but there are different options. And if you can go to the next slide, and then even specifically with infrastructure, there's CDBG grants. There's the State Drinking Water Act. There's the ARC funds. Those are some of the funds we used on the first phase. EDA, we've worked on some other downtown projects where we use some EDA funds. The American Rescue Plan Act. I mean, just as recent as last week, they came out with the final rule was issued by the state and local recovery funds program, where they were defining a little bit better of what can be used on with these funds. And they talked about, transmission and distribution of drinking water, your water lines. They talked about green infrastructure. They talked about your storm sewers. They talked about your sanitary sewers. So there's a lot of the critical infrastructure that the city needs that we know that there's some funding sources that they're eligible for. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee you can get anything, but what I'm saying is, if you can show that we know, or what that is eligible, and you go through the process, you may not get all the money you need, but when you start looking at these different pots, you can get some from here and from here. Katie, if you can go to the next one. And then I put a couple up here, even with green space and recreation. This kind of goes back to talking about holistically when we're looking at the downtown areas. You may have little pocket parks. You may have some artwork. You may have, some things where maybe there's a grant for, for $5,000 or $10,000 here. But when you start pulling those all together, you may be able to pay for some of the site amenities or some of the visual pleasantries, if you will. And Kate, you can go to the next one. And the same thing with placemaking grants. And again, I'm not saying every one of these is applicable to the downtown, but even like the National Endowment of Arts, we've used that on a project too for some artwork. So if you do some type of mural or you do some type of artwork, like I said, if you have, again, a little pocket park or something, that there's different funding sources, opportunities out there. And I think the key is, as you're going forward, infrastructure is critical. But keeping in mind some of those other items, there may be some other grants that maybe pay for some things that it's really not going to cost as much as you think it is when you put it all together. And one more slide, I think, and then even goes to some of the buildings. There's some like facade grants and building improvement grants that may not necessarily be included in a specific downtown construction roadway project, but it's something that, that the city may want to look at, or some of the property owners may want to take a look at. And then again, this goes to the holistic approach, going from building face to building face, because it's when you do all those improvements together where you get that really that not only the infrastructure that's needed and desired, but you get that sense of place. And I think that's the end of it. So I'm trying to give you a little bit of time if you have some questions. Also, we try to go through that fairly quickly, and we want to be respectful of your time. And I wasn't sure if anyone had any questions or comments. And let me say, if it goes beyond, we're more than happy to stay later or meet or talk at a later date too.
Were there any cost estimates done on phase 3 back in 2001? Whenever
I would go, well, let me go back to do that, because I know typically what we do is when we go through the whole master planning process and we look at the phases, we do cost estimates for a lot of the roadways. But it's, to be honest, this project, although I did work on this project, this was the first project I worked at with this company 20 years ago. So it's dating me a little bit, but I will look at, because if we have it, we would have those records of an idea, at least. Even if those, obviously the unit cost wouldn't necessarily be fairly accurate, but they would have some good quantities to start. So I'll look for that.
You mentioned the age of the Morford Street infrastructure. I mean, do we have a knowledge of what that age is?
Ricky does.
Sewer was late 60s, maybe some of it in the 50s, but and then water's probably in that same age, 70s. It's probably in the 70s, but sewer, I don't think we have anything that was put in past earlier than the 50s.
What's the average lifespan of those types of that infrastructure?
I mean, we have very little trouble in that area as far as right now. It's hard to say. It's just, the volume has to do with it. But, we have very little trouble in that area. We've had some service line leaks. But as far as sewer, I know something was said earlier about some sewer lines that may be 100 years old. They may be some services that may be that old, depending on the houses. But as far as for the lines, we have very little trouble in that area.
And one thing to mention too is when we worked on this first phase project, we actually worked with the local engineer too, James Haley company, and we teamed up with them. So they actually did some of the water and the sewer plans. We worked on some of the other infrastructure projects. So kind of even the approach with the funding, although we have a lot of the expertise in-house too, we try to find what makes sense for each community, what works best. And if you have a consultant that's very familiar with your infrastructure, that's someone we would definitely want to team up with and use their knowledge so you get as much local knowledge as you can when you're doing the improvements.
Do you all help with the grant work, or is that up to us?
So we help with the grant work also. We have both people in-house that we do the grant work with. And there's been times where, similar like I just mentioned with the sewer work, we have other consultants that we also can team up with doing some of the grant work, locally. But that's something that for some communities, we'll do all the work as far as doing the applications, and other than maybe if someone officially needs to sign it. Some communities, they say, oh, well, maybe we'll do this one. So we can work with you to with the level that's needed.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I will say, I called him about the irrigation on Main Street to see about how it worked, and he came straight the next day. I think came the next day, and we walked and looked. And it's very interesting.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're here. Like I said, we've been here for, I mean, with you guys maybe remotely for 20 years, and I'm hoping to be here maybe another 20 years. I don't know.
Well, it would be great.
But again, we just really wanted to kind of refresh everyone's memory of kind of where you've been, what's been going on, and knowing infrastructure is always critical and with the funding and these projects, they take a while. I mean, some of these grant applications, you like with a TAP grant, for instance, the typically the applications are due in October of each year. You find out usually the following spring or summer if you get the grant. Like with that particular grant, you usually have 3 years once you're awarded to get to construction, and then another 2 years to use the money. So it seems like a long time, the 5 years, but when a lot of these are going through the DOT and some of the governing agencies, it just takes a while to get there. So just saying, okay, we need something, you may not get a shovel in the ground for 2 or 3 years. So, getting the planning, getting some momentum, giving you some opportunity to find those funding sources, it does take a little bit of time.
Excellent. Well, that was a good presentation. Thank you all for coming.
And again, if after the fact, a week, month, whenever, if you have any more questions, please just reach out and contact us, and we're more than happy to help you out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, thank you.
It is 7 o'clock. We will call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the McMinnville City Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The first item on the agenda is roll call.
All the board members are present, Mayor Chastain, except for Stacy Harvey, Sally Broth, and Edward Brock.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes. Each member of the board should have received the minutes from the December 14th meeting. If there be no requests for additions, corrections, or deletions, we'll entertain a motion to dispense with those as read.
I'll make a motion to dismiss the minutes.
Have a motion by Ms. Kirby, second by Mr. Sutton. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Item 3 is recognition of visitors. If anybody wishes to address the board this evening, please approach the podium and state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Tracy McCord, and I live at 108 Post Road here in McMinnville. And I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the board for giving me an opportunity to speak to you tonight about what I believe to be a safety issue. But before I get to that, I'd like to make a personal statement if I could. When Scott and I moved to McMinnville just short of 10 years ago, we hoped that we would make a positive impact on the community. And I believe we have. And I believe we will continue to make a positive impact. What we've discovered in our time here is some seasons are good and some seasons are not so good. Some bring victories and some not so many victories. But we know with tenacity that we can persevere. I believe it's the same tenacity that has brought us to this point today. A day when we can all recognize, all of us here can recognize that the Georgia Bulldogs are the national champions. We got to relish in the glory when we can. So thank you for your indulgence. What I did want to talk to you about tonight is, as I stated, we live on Post Road, and I have a concern about the speed that people travel on our street. I know that the citywide speed limit on residential streets is 30 miles per hour, but I think that's dangerous. On more than one occasion, I've witnessed people running up Post Road, having to jump in the ditch to avoid being hit. I myself have had several near misses just getting my mail. During the summer, I walked the section of Post Road from our home about midway up the hill picking up trash. I've had my hat blown off my head because the cars are traveling too fast. They may be doing the speed limit of 30 miles per hour, but that is too fast for a neighborhood. Years ago, former Mayor Haley told me that he was going to get Post Road paved and get rid of all the potholes. I pleaded with him, please don't do that. It's the only thing that makes people slow down. Most people here in McMinnville think of Post Road as just a cut through to the Milner Center or to Walmart. But for those of us who live on Post Road and parts of Main Street, this is our neighborhood street. Main Street citizens that live on our end of Post Road have to cross the street to get their mail. Several years ago, my neighbor across the street had knee replacement. And she was able, and she was out and about to her mailbox. I walked up and spoke to her to see how she was getting along. As she crossed back to her driveway, here comes a car in a great big hurry. All I can say is that I'm glad that she was paying attention, and I'm glad that she was feeling well enough to hurry out of the way. Halloween of 2020, we sat at the end of our driveway to hand out candy. People parked on the side of the road, kids piled out of cars, and they went to gather their treats. Cars still flying up and down Post Road as if nothing was going on. I just ask you to think about it. What will it take? Will it take somebody getting hurt in one of our neighborhoods? Will it take somebody dying as a pedestrian in one of our neighborhoods? I'm not here to just dump it on you. I do have a few ideas for you to consider. Number one, lower the speed limit in all residential streets. Number two, install a three-way stop at Post Road and Sunset. I do realize that changes don't happen overnight, and I appreciate your time and your consideration. I'd especially like to thank Zach Sutton for his tenacity and willingness to do what he can to find the resolution for the city and for the citizens. Thanks again for your time. Go Dogs.
Hello, I'm Raven Young. I'm here on behalf of Main Street McMinnville tonight, and I just kind of wanted to give an update because we have hired a new executive director that we're very excited about. Her name is Jennifer Flatt Meredith. She has most recently been with the chamber and is coming to our side. So we're very happy. She's still working out her notice for the next couple of weeks, and she'll actually start with us on the 24th as our executive director. So we had some really great events over the holidays, and we're just really excited to start the new year with our director and new events. We are going to be meeting in the next couple of weeks to start planning Main Street Live and the other things that we're planning for. So just wanted to give an update.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
My turn. Carrie Morton, Indian Mound Drive, 942. I didn't get to come to the December meeting, and Stacy alluded to some emails that we had gotten over the stormwater. So I just kind of want to clear that up. I was the one that asked him to bring that up since I wouldn't be able to be here. So on October the 14th, we had a really good meeting with a representative from James C. Haley and some others in that area about the stormwater. So when I got an email from Lyndon, which I do appreciate being kept up to date on it since it's very important to me, I kind of thought maybe we were moving ahead. So maybe I got my cart before my horse a little bit, because I guess I realized things don't move that quickly. But it was October and this was December. So I thought maybe we'd had a little something in the middle there and something was really going to be happening. I do appreciate Frank going out on that one Saturday and taking those videos, because it was a day off for him, and I do appreciate that. What that did show to me, though, once again, was they're very inadequate, because if the Lord hadn't stopped the rain, guess what? We've been bailing water again. So since that time, I've had 2 more episodes, which it's very scary when you think that your building's going to flood again. So we get in our cars and we go around, we make sure that everything's cool before we start getting the shot backs out and all that again. So anyway, I just want to bring it back up again that we're going to hopefully keep proceeding in that direction to get something done about this. So anyway, thank you very much.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, recognition of employees. We have several department heads here this evening. If anybody wishes to give recognition to an employee. Mr.
Tonight, I'd like to recognize Rhonda Sparkman. Rhonda has been an employee of the city for 32 years. During this time, she has held several different positions. Currently, she's an accounting technician in the administration department. Rhonda recently obtained the CMFO, Certified Municipal Finance Officer certification. The CMFO education program is a year-long process through the State Comptroller's Office. MTAS administers the education process and testing to achieve the CMFO designation. The Act designates the Comptroller's Office as certification authority. In addition to the CMFO certification, Rhonda also obtained her CMC, Certified Municipal Clerk certification. This certification requires 100 hours of education credits and is administered through the Secretary of State's office. I'm very proud of Rhonda and the accomplishments she's obtained this year.
Congratulations.
I have with me, this is Officer Andreas Andy Aguilar. He started with the department December 14th of 2015. He has met all the requirements to become the Master Patrol Officer with our department. He interviewed and took a written exam and did all that well. Part of the requirements also is that it includes over 120 hours of post-approved training courses, a proficient driving record, excellent work history. He is very active in the department, taking on additional duties and responsibilities regularly. He serves on the SWAT team, bike patrol team. He's the FTO coordinator here, and he's also a CIT officer. We're very proud of him, and he is now our Master Patrol Officer. And he's a very valuable asset to our department.
Congratulations, Andy. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, communications. There is a request from Janice Easterly with Tennessee Workforce Development to waive associated fees at the Milner Recreation Center for a job fair on February the 9th. Justin, has she discussed this with you? Do you have any problems with that at all?
No.
Okay. All right. That typically for nonprofit organizations or events like this, we've done this in the past. We usually only hold those having parties or reunions, events like that to pay those fees. So I'll entertain a motion for us to waive the booking fees for Tennessee Workforce Development to have the job fair on February 9th.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Harvey,
Second it.
second by Ms. Kirby. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Are there any other communications? All right. Item 6 is petitions. There are none. Item 7 is unfinished business. It does have an item, but I think it should fall. Oh, never mind. I'm looking at something else. I'm sorry. Item 7A is consider approval of engagement letter with Reno and Kavanaugh for legal services related to the TIF agreement on the sale of the blue building. Chair recognizes David Baird.
Thank you, Mayor. So you'll see in your packet, well, first we have a memo from Nolan, but also the actual engagement letter, which is written by David Kleinfelter of Reno and Kavanaugh. Obviously, as you remember with recent developments in the blue building RFP process, the selected preferred developer that was selected wants to do a TIF project. I think I speak for both our city attorney and myself that TIF law is very complex, stands for tax increment financing. And it's definitely something that from the city's perspective, you want to make sure is done right. That's not an expertise area for either myself or Mr. Pirtle. So we felt that that it made sense to engage an outside group in this. I researched and looked through groups that and firms that offer this service. This is one that has a level of expertise and was very willing to get back with me very quickly and repeatedly. So I feel comfortable with moving forward with this group. It was also highly recommended by the Housing Authority, who has used their services before on other tax issues and ownership issues. So, any questions?
Just any ballpark idea how much time this takes for them? I mean,
yeah, I think they can get it pretty quick. We'll be working with two different attorneys. The attorney that is the specialist in TIF, his name is Dwayne Barrett, and they are highly sought after, but having a second attorney can be helpful with that because they can deal with the communication aspect with us, the client. I think that they are ready to move at the pace that we're ready to move at. I don't feel that that we're going to have any delays moving forward with it. So I as quickly as we can move through the process, they're going to be with us.
I don't have are we going to spend, I don't know if we're going to spend $5,000 or $50,000. I don't have.
Yeah.
Is there any?
Well, I think it's $5,000 is what we have approved here tonight. That is their ballpark estimate, is about $5,000. We wanted to bring it to the committee because it could be a little bit of or not to the committee, but to the whole board. There could be a little bit of an overrun there, but we don't expect this to be a $50,000 engagement. There are certainly areas of the process that myself and Mr. Pirtle can work with. We have done that, but it's good to have the expert opinion, an extra set of eyes. And really when it comes to the TIF portion of it, that's the portion that's very nuanced in the law and really needs some assistance with.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve the letter.
As Mr. Harvey was stating, is the estimate in that letter?
There's an hourly rate provided.
Yeah, there is an hourly rate that is provided, and we would be assigning specific, items to them as we move forward. So it wouldn't be just like they would take it and before we know it, we have a large bill for 50 hours worth of work. It's not, that wouldn't happen. As far as the exact cost, it's hard to put a finger on it, but they have told me that what they have told me is that there are a few areas of the law that we really need to get through, and those are the key areas. And if we get through that, then it shouldn't be an issue.
Man, I don't disagree with the fact that it's good to have the expertise, but I feel like having some level of not giving a blank check for.
Sure.
I think we do need to have some type of on that motion.
Could the letter be rewritten to state something like not to exceed perhaps $7,500, or is that?
Yeah, I would think they would be, they verbally have told me that they don't expect it to be more than $5,000. So I don't think it would be a problem to go back to them and ask, hey, can you write it to say that this cost would not exceed a certain amount. The other thing would be that, you might, and I'm just kind of thinking through it with that being a concern, and I understand that concern, that you could only authorize us to give out that amount of work. And that might be another way to do it without, so we get it approved tonight. But I am happy to go back and say that, and ask them to put in that it would only be up to $10,000 or something like that.
Hey, I might add to David's point, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, for a lawyer to accept an engagement of this nature, which isn't your average everyday preparation of a real estate transaction. So it's very, very hard to guesstimate what the total end cost would be, because we drive that by the time, their time that we take or require for their services. They put in their agreement that David is offering for your approval, that they will bill on a monthly cycle, and they'll be open to discussion as to what's contained within that billing item and cycle. I have total comfort in the engagement letter that he's obtained and negotiated, and I don't think you need to worry if the cost starts going in the wrong direction, or we feel that it's getting out of hand or out of proportion. We can have conversations with them. We're not locked in.
Would it help to provide a regular report at our meetings as to where we're at?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then we can just say, hey, here's where we're at.
Yeah.
And again, not to dominate the discussion, but we need to get this engagement so we can get going. The investors are ready to roll, and they've been asking, and rightly so, what do we need to do to get the game going? And this is what we need to do.
Well, if the rest of the board is equally comfortable, I will sign this letter as long as we do have the ability to rein it in should something of that
Absolutely.
nature occur.
And it's provided for in the agreement that David massaged with them.
Yeah, and I would like to kind of echo what Mr. Pirtle said, is that it is difficult for them to put, because I've been on the other side of this, and if you were to say it will not exceed $10,000, then your fear is that the city then throws a ton of work and it's way more than $10,000. I mean, our intent here is to use them for when we need them, not to give them the project.
Okay.
That is, the idea is not to just say, hey, you're completely doing this and we're not involved in any way, shape, or form. It's really that we have a couple of key areas that we really need their expertise in to make this work.
The other thing is, if they estimated 5 and we've approved 10, then, then they're.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're gonna spend, they're gonna cost that much.
Yeah, I mean, they have verbally told me that David Kleinfelter, who signed this letter, has verbally told me that Dwayne Barrett is a man of few words, but key words and words you want to listen to. That was almost his direct line. So he said he's pretty straight to the point. He said he's the larger cost per hour.
I mean, I'm okay with doing this. It's not a very reputable firm, and they've worked for the housing authority. And I mean, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion? I'll entertain a motion to approve the letter.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Harvey. Second by Mr. Sutton. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Oh, all right. Well, that's good.
Any other unfinished business come forward board? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 8, new business. This is not on the agenda. This came in slightly after the packets went out, but we do need to appoint 2 new members to the Tourism Development Board. I have Sarah Cantrell here this evening, who is the president of the organization at present. And before the meeting tonight, she sent me correspondence asking us to consider Christy Ross and Brooks Young for these seats. Christy Ross was just appointed to the Park Theater Advisory Board as the TDB liaison due to beneficial knowledge and connections with the music, recording, and entertainment industries. She's also a major contributor and point of contact for large ongoing projects for the organization. Mr. Young is the coordinator for workforce development at TCAT here in McMinnville and has extensive grant writing experience. He is been awarded over $2 million worth of grants for his work at TCAT, and he serves on the Main Street McMinnville Board of Directors, and they wish him to be the Tourism Development Board Liaison for that organization. He has key contacts in larger tourism markets where we would also like to look into the future. Ms. Cantrell, do you have any comments for the board?
I do not have any additional comments, but I would like you to know that this was very thought through as to these two potential appointees, and I would like you to consider them.
So the seats that are open right now are Mrs. Ross and then Chad McGee. These were two, I guess, of the two of the pilot members that we appointed when we first launched this organization. I don't even remember when that was, 2018, 17. So their terms are up. So again, these are the members that they have asked to fill the vacant seats.
I'll just echo the fact that when we appointed the Miss Ross to the Park Theater Board, part of the, I mean, she brings a wealth of experience, but also that network and that cohesiveness between the different boards, so we can have the tourism board and the Park Theater working together on projects.
Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion for these two to be awarded these seats.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Ms. Kirby,
Second.
second by Mr. Sutton. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Item 9 is resolutions. Item 9A is resolution number 2153, a resolution to authorize the city of McMinnville, Tennessee to dedicate right-of-way to the state of Tennessee for state project number 89951-2558-04, Warren County Tract 13, consisting of 1.129 acres, more or less as described in legal description Exhibit A attached hereto and incorporated by reference with all boundaries and descriptions as shown on the plans for highway project as listed above, right of way on file in the Office of Department of Transportation in Nashville. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Sutton, second by Mr. Harvey. Mr. Purtle.
We're simply going forward with our commitment to provide TDOT with that portion of the property that the city has acquired from Page Setters that is necessary for right-of-way purposes. It will remain property of the city, but it will be subject to TDOT's right-of-way. And for the purpose of the record and to meet a deadline tomorrow, we need to get Recorder Durham's signature, the mayor's signature, and my signature on an original so that no one will have an opportunity to meet that deadline tomorrow.
All right. Any questions?
Just out of curiosity, what's on the highlighted area on the map? What's that little foot that sticks out?
That's the big sinkhole.
So why is that? Yeah,
This part, yeah.
that's part of what we're,
They're gonna need to fill that in
okay.
to be able to bring that road through. So when they fill it in, it's gonna have to obviously go out beyond the edge of the pavement. So
They just need that to be able to do the work.
that's right.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussions? Now we'll call for the vote.
Zach Sutton,
Aye.
Steve Harvey,
Yes.
Rachel Kirby,
Yes.
Mary Justine.
Aye, motion passes. Item 9B is resolution number 2154, a resolution of the city of McMinnville, Tennessee to hire Reagan Smith Associates to create a master plan for a fee of $50,000 per the 2021 TDEC Healthy Benefit Environments Grant and to set the date for this resolution to become effective. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Kirby. Second by Mr. Sutton. Questions?
Grant is $38,000. And we're finding $2,000 to cover the additional cost.
Mhm. We'll call for the vote.
Rachel Kirby,
Yes.
Seth Sutton,
Aye.
Steve Harvey,
Yes.
Mayor Chester.
Aye, motion passes. Item 10 is ordinances. There are none. Item 11 is departmental reports. If any department head wishes to address the board, please step forward. Chair recognizes Chief Mosley.
There was one thing I forgot to mention when Andy was up here earlier, that he did get accepted as 2022 class of the leadership at McMinnville. So we're excited for him to get to attend that.
Excellent, thank you. Chair recognizes Justin Scott.
Just wanted to update you all what's going on at the Milner Recreation Center. Our youth basketball league's going well. Practices 5 nights a week. All 8 goals are being utilized. Games are played on Saturdays. Our winter tennis league's going well. Fitness classes, we got classes going 7 days a week. Boxing, cycling, yoga, silver sneakers, pound, step, Zumba. And it seems like our classes are picking up as far as attendance, with it being the new year. Rentals seem to be picking up as far as our room rentals, the banquet hall. Michael Benucius, our program coordinator, has an introductory Spanish class that starts Thursday. He had a homeschool PE class today, had 15 participants, so we were excited about that. We have our functional fitness area on the west balcony, which seems to be, it's being utilized a lot. We're drawing in a new crowd. Our wellness center's busy both morning and afternoon and evening. Soccer signups started yesterday. They're going to go through mid-February. That's our spring league. Terry Beard, our athletic coordinator, he's got signups starting Monday, January 17th for our summer baseball and softball. And then our memberships are picking up, both individual and family. So we're seeing a surge in that. And if things go as planned, February is usually our big month because it takes folks about 30 days to get rolling. So, thank you.
So
Yep.
the Civic Center is not unused.
No, it's not unused. We're seeing our numbers increasing, and I can report back at maybe the next meeting or whenever to discuss, kind of what we're seeing number wise.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that I've been over there several times during the night and the day and the week. It is packed. The basketball courts are packed. The exercise room is packed. People are coming and going from classes. The tennis court is rented reserved every hour. And even upstairs basketball goals are packed. Spin class is packed. It is being well used.
Contrary to popular belief.
Contrary to some gossip around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
All right.
Mr. Purtle, do you have anything?
No, I have something for the recorder and you with regard to the resolution that was passed before we leave.
Okay. Mr. May.
I do have one thing, wanted to talk quickly about stormwater, to Carrie's point. So we have been working on things. Mr. Nathaniel Green is here and he can speak to what we've been doing on the Pierce Street project specifically, but before that, I will speak to what we've done on the Morrison Street project, which is Frank and his crew, Ricky, Lyndon Bissell, they've all worked together to clear out some of that storm drain. We feel like some of the concrete and mortar that we've removed is going to help carry the water through as it should. I've been over there checking on it whenever I can during a heavy storm rain event, and it's been good so far. But so we've made some repairs to that line that we think might help, but we're keeping an eye on that. So we have done that. Now, Nathaniel has been working in the background where you won't see anything yet, but go ahead and kind of explain where you're at.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good new year. On Pierce Street, where we're at is following that meeting that we had in October. The first availability that I had with Michael Moore to be able to meet on site was mid-November. And so we met mid-November. I gave him an idea. I had USGS maps with me. We met at the Civic Center parking lot. and sort of walked a perimeter in the rim toward the, I guess, toward the Walmart side of the parking lot up there. And I gave him an idea of what I was looking for. And I asked him for information with respect to, from my perspective, how soon that he could get on it and how soon he could get us information. He told me he would think about it and he would be able to get back to me the week after December. Not hearing back from him the second week after Thanksgiving, I'd gotten with him again via email. He provided me some additional information and his thinking about it. We actually came together on a little bit better plan from our perspectives, and that is to use LiDAR data that we're able to pull, which basically is imaging of contours from the sky, rather than him going around through people's backyards and figuring out, you know, the falls and lays of the land. That's going to take quite a bit more time for him, and being able to put that information into perspective in a drawing that I can see. He actually today was able to provide me with data for that entire area. So now I have contour data, 2-foot contour data for that entire area. And I'm sorry, it was yesterday, I think, that he provided it to me, but now we're overlaying an orthographic map, or overlaying it onto an orthographic map, which basically is just an aerial view of that area. In the meantime, knowing that I was going to need to be able to do get all that information, I've been working in the background to be able to figure out all the impervious surfaces in that area. And so what I mean by that is rooftops, sidewalks, pavement, any of the parking lots that you have. And I can do that with imagery. Not only that, I have come during some of the rain events. Now, there haven't been any that have been quite heavy enough for me to see water come out of bank yet, or at least that I've been here for between that span of October and now, but I'm continuing to, particularly on the weekends, I'm here a lot on the weekends. And so being able to go out and see those things, it helps me to understand in what direction the water's flowing. In the meantime, what that allows us to do, since I've got that LiDAR data and we're not having to have Michael to focus on the entire watershed, the thing that he's going to be doing for us is going from the Civic Center down through Miss Morton's property and then back across to, I always forget the road, Mullican. Yes, where so the drainage goes across the highway over to Mullican, then there's the large tower over there. And there's not a whole lot of fall. I know Ricky's taking a look at it over there. And so that's one of the things that we're going to do with Michael, is to figure out what the capacity of the existing stormwater infrastructure is to take it. And then the thing that I'm doing in the background right now is figuring out, using the contours and the impervious surface, what the watershed, what that capacity is, how much water is actually flowing whenever you get a rain event that causes the flooding in those areas. And so I'm hoping that probably by the end of this month that I'll have information on what those flows look like. But the jury's still out from Michael's perspective on how long it's going to take him to get those points along the lines, like the different culvert sizes and stuff like that. But it is going to be a lot quicker than it would have been if we were having to rely on him to provide us with survey data for the entire watershed. So I still don't have an answer as to when we're going to be completely finished. I'm anticipating that it's going to be within the next few months. But I do hope to have a better idea of what the actual flow that's coming through there by the end of this month, and I can report back on that. So if you guys have any questions for me, I'm open to trying to answer.
Seems like, to summarize, before going out there and digging up where we think would be a good spot to store some water, we're going to try to do the math and figure it out from there. So
that's correct, because if we don't know how much water is flowing through there, the other thing is making sure that you mitigate any future development, which of course you've got Lyndon now, and Lyndon is great at his job of making sure that water balances and things happen.
So I see him everywhere taking elevation. Is that what he's doing out on the sidewalks?
actually, that's part of his sidewalk study that we'll hear more about on Friday.
I thought he was taking elevations for the water.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Any other departmental reports? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 12, announcements. Any member of the board have any announcements this evening?
Park Theater has T. Graham Brown on the 14th and the National Songwriters Night on the 21st, 7 p.m.
National Songwriters Night, I think, is the first show of the package deal that you buy. So if you want to buy the package, you can get that before, not T. Graham Brown, but the next week. Yeah.
It's the package is National Songwriters Jeff Allen, David Nail, T.C. Cope and Friends, Doug Stone, and Keith Anderson.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Purtle, do you have anything? Mr. Main?
No.
At the conclusion of this meeting, I'm going to call a brief executive session of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to discuss a couple of things. Mr. Morton and Ms. Rutledge, if you all would stay behind, I'll have to ask everyone else to clear out the boardroom. Thank you. We are adjourned.